Thank you all for joining one of the webinars from Anitech, and this is one of the many webinars that we have across the year. This is the first in 2026, and we'll have more. So we'll keep you posted on that as well. So the topic for today is the ISO 9001 2026 version that's upcoming in late 2026, and just understanding what are the potential changes that might be associated with the same and how this might impact you and what we could do around getting ready for this particular one. Um, so, uh, like I just suggested, this is something that's going to be released or coming into action late in 2026. But then why are we doing this webinar so early if this is not fully published? Now, ISO 9001 has the capacity or the possibility that it's the single most used standard across most of the organizations that are certified to any standard. This will be a foundational standard to everyone. So everyone is keen to know what this change would mean and how disruptive this can be, and what it could do for their business, or what are the risks associated with the change. So I could see a lot of interest and a lot of inquiries related to asking what are the changes, what we could expect. And also why we also chose to do this early is that there are different information currently available in the internet, because there were suggestions in the committee draft stage. Currently the published is the DIS, or the draft international standard. So at different stages, there are different speculations, and these are all floating around. So we thought we'll give you some clarity around what is the current available information on the themes that are in consideration for the 2026 version, or the areas that will have some changes based on the current version that we know. To just to introduce you, if you are someone that does not know me, my name is Sanjay Shivakumar. I'm the advisory and audit service lead at Anitech, working with Anitech for the past 6 years. And I've been working with multiple companies, multiple sectors, managing different standards, including 9001 and many other standards. So I'll be the one taking you through this session. So like I said, a standard takes a structured step to get released. So currently it's in a DIS state, which is called a draft international standard stage, which was published. The final draft will be released in March and will officially be published in September and then you can start getting certified for the standard. But the intention is to understand what are the current available information and how this could impact your business. So that's what we'll be going through. Now, based on my research and based on what all information I was able to collect, I was trying to understand why this is changing now. It's already overdue because the original version was in 2015. It's been a while. But when we look at what has happened in the last couple of years, or last decade, I would say, there has been a lot of changes in the way we work in terms of the digital capabilities, in terms of some events that cause some disruptions like COVID-19 and some climate-related issues, and that stress towards sustainability and ESG that comes as part of the climate-related issues as well, and some other expectations that come out of the quality standards and other standards as well. So overall, all these changes cumulated to these requirements, and these become evident in all the changes that have come to the standard as well, which I'll take you through. Just a quick update as well. If you have any questions at any point, just feel free to put it in the chat. We'll consolidate it at the end, and we'll just go through all of them as much as possible. We'll pick up the essential ones and have a review on those questions. So this is not the only elements that's changing, but these are the elements that have a major shift, and we'll go through in detail in the next upcoming slides as well. So the leadership and culture element has a majority or a very complex change associated with quality culture and ethical behavior. And it's not just in the leadership element that this has come. It has reflected in multiple clauses, reflected in 5.1, it's reflected in the awareness clause in 7.3, it's affected in the service delivery in clause 8. So this word, quality culture and ethical behavior, has been reflected in multiple sections. And this is what is going to be a crucial change in the system, and I'll tell you why later on as well. Risk and opportunities, which is the foundation. There's no business without such a system in ISO 9001. But there are some emphasis towards a bit more emphasis towards opportunity now rather than just risk, and I'll take you through that. Some changes related to the process of managing changes, because and related to communication as well. There are, because of the changes in the digital technologies out there and some requirements related to resilience during disruption, there are some communication requirements that has changed. Like I said, the modes of work have changed in the industry. There is a lot of digital work, there is a lot of remote work happening, hybrid work happening. Based on that, there are some changes that's reflective in the infrastructure and environment of work, which we'll discuss later. And as you know, the climate change commitment or the impact assessment that was there in the 2024 amendment has stayed on, and that will affect the businesses and will be added to the 2020 version in much more emphasis, which we'll go through. What I thought I'll do is I'll just quickly go through the major elements that's changed clause-wise. Now, to be fair, these are not the only changes. There has been structural changes, wording changes here and there, but overall, the main changes are sometimes it's just the way it's worded or the emphasis has shifted a bit. But these are the areas that I believe have a risk if we don't address them. So I've just highlighted the main ones that I believe that we must take into consideration at this point. So as you all know, from the 2024 amendment for climate change, we are required to understand how climate change impacts our business and how we build resilience around that. And in 4.2, we have to understand how stakeholders, if there's any stakeholder related expectation related to climate change. Now this, even though it's not explicitly mentioned, there is a mention in the annexures that if the requirement creates a requirement for sustainability consideration and sustainability reporting, we have to consider that and imbibe that into the quality management system as well, even though we are not covering it as a 14,001 system. So as part of the climate commitments, you might have a commitment towards your stakeholders to understand your sustainability and emissions. So then that side of the business, that side of the monitoring will also have to be incorporated into the management system. In terms of leadership, like I said, there is emphasis on quality culture. It's not just enough to tell them there is a quality management system and there is an ethics policy. You have to demonstrate that and the evidence of that has to be demonstrated to the auditors as well. Now, this is something we'll be discussing in detail later as well. It's being mentioned in the other clause as well. That's why it's really important to understand how we adapt to this requirement. Quality policy, not much change, but there is a specific requirement now listed that you have to consider the context of the business. There's a stronger emphasis because this is the core document in the management system. It's really important that we update the policy or review the policy to make sure that commitment has been implemented as well. Risk and opportunities, the base framework of the risk and opportunity framework has remained the same, but the intention is that we stress on the requirement around opportunities as well. Traditionally, in most of the cases, we look at the risk, the negative connotation around the risk, and just focus on that. Maybe we'll have a couple of opportunities listed and managed for the sake of compliance. Opportunities were already listed in the previous version, but not this explicitly. Now a specific subclause has been is being listed or considered in the in this clause that makes us commit towards having a system to manage opportunities as well, which is different from the previous version. So this will be things that are specifically audited when the new version comes into circulation or gets started to be audited. Now, in terms of planning of changes, again, this is a very important clause. There hasn't been a major change in the clause, I would say, but there have been some additional sub-elements added to add emphasis on reviewing the effectiveness of the change. It's not just enough to have the plan around how to implement and how to make sure everything is done on time. the emphasis has been put in the initial stage itself to plan out how you will review the effectiveness of the change, how you will ensure the outcome has been met. And this has to be planned at the beginning of the change itself rather than just uh, uh, setting up a review mechanism at the end of the change planning. So this will be something that will quite possibly, these are things you may be already doing, but this is something that's now been explicitly mentioned, which means it will be explicitly questioned by the external auditors. Um, Now, 7 point in the clause 7 regarding infrastructure and environment, this is a very big piece. So it's specifically explicitly mentioning that the work infrastructure have changed from a traditional office-based work to work that's done remotely or through hybrid work. So this the standard is suggesting that there are a lot of opportunities generating from this because of the capability to work from different countries and different platforms. But it also suggests that there are risks associated with it. So the business has to identify the risk associated with this change in infrastructure and the work environment, and make sure you put in necessary controls around that. It might be that you make sure when people are working from home, there is a mechanism to make sure they are working in a safe environment. They are not they are in a safe environment for work. It also is suggesting and hinting towards data security and data validity and relevance as well. Now, when there is a capability of people accessing information from remote places based on the type of data that you hold, there are risks associated with the data security, the data management. So based on the type of data or the risk associated with the data that you use, you may need to implement some administrative controls or even some engineering controls around making sure there is a proper use of data security, and even going towards an ISMS certification where relevant as well. So that's why that piece or that specific change is going to be really crucial in for many businesses. In terms of awareness, the base requirement has stayed the same, but because of the change in initially in leadership, that a quality culture has to be built up and the ethics has to be built up. It's across the life of the project, internally facing and externally facing as well. So how we make sure this is communicated to the staff, it might be through workshops, it might be through trainings, it might be through a lead by example kind of mechanism from the leaders. It depends on the size and the nature of the business, but this will be something that's going to be really important to demonstrate because it's coming up in multiple clauses. That's why it's really crucial. Customer communication, it was already there. The only expectation is that it's emphasizing more on how you'll manage communication in terms of contingencies when disruptions happen. What is your mechanism? You can't start thinking of how you will manage that at a point of disruption. You have to have mechanisms built in. It might be already part of your business continuity planning or another process, but this is explicitly being asked or re-emphasized by the standard in the new version at this point. So this again originates from the climate impact, where there was disruptions in the past due to floods or earthquakes, and there should be a mechanism to ensure the business has systems in place to bifurcate that blocks and still be able to deliver service without disruption, because work stoppage for a couple of weeks or stoppage of delivery for a couple of weeks can be a massive issue for most of the businesses. So it's really important to understand how we manage that resilience. In in external service provision, there is now a specific commitment. There is always a commitment that you interact with the customers, but now it's also expanding to just beyond the customers and saying relevant interested parties or stakeholders, which might be our customers. So it's expecting that we involve the suppliers with other stakeholders to manage certain requirements. It might be quality improvement, it might be non-conformance management. So that specific terminology has increased. And where possible, this will be tested on our system to understand how we are able to demonstrate this to an auditor, that how we are incorporating the suppliers where possible. Customer satisfaction, the requirement stays the same, but it's taking current world scenarios. It's adding the word social media as a mechanism to collect the feedback. It's not just relying on traditional surveys, it's moving towards the latest digital platforms to understand real world, real time information. In terms of the audit programs in the clause 9.2, everything stays the same except you have to have the audit objective defined. So it's not just enough to say what you're auditing and when or who is auditing. You have to understand why that is being audited, why it's important to audit that rather than another process. What is the objective that you're expecting? Is efficiency improvement or process improvement? So it has to be defined in the audit program or the audit plan. Management review, again, one of the most crucial pieces in the management system. We still need to do that, but there are some slight re-emphasis on certain requirements that it asking us to review the changes in the needs and expectations of interested parties. And there is a re-emphasis towards that outcome from the management review has to feed into a continual improvement project or a continual improvement action. So that's what the PDCA cycle always talked about as well. That when we do the check on the PDCA, when the management review happens, when we identify some outcomes, some actions, it becomes a continual improvement to change the system altogether and improve the system year on year. So that continual improvement has been re-emphasized at the end of the management review requirement. So it has to tie up to that system of the business. Now, clause 10, it's about improvement. It's talking about, and it's explained in much more detail towards the end of the standard in the annexure as well. So it's talking about what's happening, and it's talking about the digitalization and the digital tools out there. It's also talking about the latest innovative technologies or emerging technologies is a specific word. So it's asking us to make sure we assess that and use that to our opportunity, which will give us value, but be cautious as well, making sure that it gives it is the right fit for us. In the previous clauses, when you're looking at the risk management as well, we ensure the new technology, the new digital infrastructure and everything comes under the QMS control, and you have process around monitoring and managing the same as well. So it's tying up all together throughout the clauses, but it is imbibing the latest trends in the digital markets and the digital capabilities and what's happening in the world right now. So that's what the improvement is about. It's about taking on board what are the latest trends and latest capabilities in the market as well. Now, what's not changing? So the good thing is it stays the same structure, it's same follows the same clause structure and everything, so it aligns easily with the other standards. And this is something I saw in when I was doing a research. The wording, it's just an evolution, it's not a revolution. It's not drastically changing the system. It's just evolving to meet the current world scenarios and the world requirements as well, and which is really key as well, because being the foundation for many other standards for many businesses, it's really key that the 9001 reflects what is the requirements or the trends happening in the world as well, which is visible currently in the current themes that is being listed. Now, a good thing is that there is no disruption of the core process, the service delivery, the clause 8s, the clause, all those. The main requirements stay the same. It's just re-emphasizing certain requirements and restructuring certain things and adding controls to latest risks that they have seen. Other than that, everything remains the same. So it's we don't have to worry about it too much. Someone who's already certified to standard won't have a massive disruption or a massive change in their operation. But where I see the risk is that all the required changes that they've requested is all slow imbibing changes that take time, like culture and supplier engagements. These are things that take time. It's not something you can fit in easily, but still following the high level framework that you had in the 9001 2015 version. So that's a good thing. Like I said, the climate impact amendment from 2024 for 9001, I believe everyone has already been aware of this and everyone has put controls around this. may I put a poll at this point to understand if you already have taken these steps? Basically, we want to understand that you have assessed how climate change can impact your business and you have taken necessary steps to mitigate that. And the standard specifically says you might not have a issue, but it's to understand at this point, have you already taken assessed whether you have a requirement and then put controls around it. So the poll should be there in front of you. If you can submit, I can just have a quick check to understand the. Okay, that's good. So I can see a majority 60-70% saying yes, which is good. But there are a few people still in progress and not started yet. Now, this is really important as because it's already there. It will be audited in this year as well. It's already being checked. Um, uh, but we can have a look. So this is being retained in the new version as well, and it's getting much more beefed up with a bit more requirements across the clauses. It's asking resilience to be added at different stages, maybe implicitly a bit as well in terms of the, like I said, the customer communication resilience during disruptions and things like that. So we'll come back to that. So what's the issue if we don't do it now? Like I said, most of the changes are very minute or re-emphasis, but the issue is that most of the changes that has been requested is slow or really time consuming changes that even to implement and also to get the effect released throughout the business will take time. So even though the standard gets released in 2026 and you have time till 2029 to transition, if you wait till 2029 to transition, you're quite likely to be having a really hard attempt at it because it'll take time to start implementing the changes. The most important one I would say is the aspects around hybrid work risks, data security, and um, certain aspects around that would be, especially also the culture. The culture is, I would say, the hardest thing to change. So the more you wait on implementing or imbibing all these changes into your existing system, the harder it will be to transition. So I would say wait for it to be released. Once it's released, start looking at a gap analysis, identify where you think you have the gaps, and then you can consider what you may need to implement. Sometimes your existing system already has all these things. You already have a change management system that looks at it effectiveness. You already have a BCP that covers the customer communication during disruptions. So it's about making sure you tick all of that already. But where you think you don't, and where you think will be challenging is where we need to start looking at things. And it's not that we have to let the external auditors know. We can start making the changes in the system, incorporate and have them take a look at the surveillance in later years, in maybe 2027, so that when the time comes, when it's 2029 to be certified, you're ready. Or you can accept and change earlier on as well as a sign of commitment, which I suggest is what is the competitive advantage of early preparation and early adoption. If you do the early adoption, it shows to the other businesses as well that you have um, uh, that you have that commitment, you are committed towards the quality of the products, and it will show trust among the different businesses, and that will be a key change that will make you stand out among the customers. And when you engage earlier with the customer, what is the standard expecting from us? It's expecting us to build resilience. It's expecting us to have better control over the culture, the quality. So the faster you imbibe all this, the faster your business can grow and take effect of all the advantages the standard is supposed to give you. So based the faster you imbibe this, it'll be a smoother transition, a smoother certification at the end, and you will have a lot of um, collective benefits that you already have by the time the others may be starting at around 2029 when they're keeping everything to the last. So the earlier you start, you will have a competitive advantage comparing to the other customers as well. So what do we recommend that you do? Like I said, once we have the final version published, you could go for, I would recommend you start with the gap analysis. Once you have the gap analysis, like I said, you may already you may already have this available. You may have already certain compliance requirements already complied, but there are chances there might be some things you need to add. So those things you will need to understand and start preparing it. The issue, like I said, is all of these are time consuming changes to start taking effect. It's not that to implement these it might take effect time, to take effect into the business and get trickle down to the different tiers and to the suppliers. It takes a long time. That's why it's really important we start early. So at the beginning, I would say for an initial assessment, you identify the initial things that will affect this. During the gap analysis, you understand around the climate change, which will be really crucial because it is currently audited as well. Understand how the current technologies and platforms and digital tools are being used in the business and how it might affect how your 9001 looks later on. And again, the most hardest piece, from my opinion, would be the ethical behavior and the quality culture. So that piece, I would say, start off as early as possible. Identify where you think you stand on that, and it might be that the leadership gets a training first, understand what is the expectation, and then create training mechanisms and packs for the other round of people or the next tier of people to ensure there is a system in place to effectively communicate that culture and requirement, and it's effectively trickled down rather than being a forced approach during just an induction. Later on, you can once you identify the issues, once you identify the risk and opportunities, you can start implementing the controls and making sure they mature across the year, and you'll be ready by the time the official version is released as well. So whatever you have planned, whatever the actions you have identified from the gap analysis, you pilot all those projects, you start and kick off on them, implement them towards the end of the 12-month period. So it'll give you enough time to spread out all these efforts. The opportunity piece will be critical if it's businesses that don't have a specific mechanism to manage opportunities. Change management, like I said, there will be a lot of changes that happen as part of this. So the best thing would be to implement all change with the new improved change system with all the review mechanisms that we are going to implement as well. Like I said, there is an emphasis on communication, especially towards resilience during disruptions, and also engaging suppliers in communication with other stakeholders rather than just yourself, talking to getting them involved in common projects as well. So this is just re-emphasizing on the timeline. Like I said, we are expecting in Q3 the publication to happen. You start implementing and getting the trainings out by 2027 early on. Once you have the full system and everything's finalized, and you can start going into the surveillance audits or your next audits with the new system and get certified earlier on rather than just waiting for the end or the transition end date of 2029. The earlier you adopt, the better you are positioned in the global market to be able to demonstrate your commitment towards quality. Just taking some real world examples at this point. So I'm sorry, it's almost 11:30. Just a couple more slides. I'll just quickly go through so that we can jump into the question and answer sessions. So, like I said, when there is a suppliers involved earlier, if you had a non-conformance, you send them a non-conformance report. Sometimes they will respond to you. You work with your customers who are not happy with the work. You become the middleman, and then it takes a while for all the communication. Rather than that, when there is key suppliers that affect the quality of the service and the customer expectations, you have a mechanism to involve them in the conversation and in the quality improvement process. There are businesses that involve have consortiums or where the suppliers come into the business and work together on non-conformance so that it doesn't happen again. So it's a suppliers also get uplifted on their quality side as well. And overall, you can expect your NCRs to drop because suppliers are now more cautious of this as well. This is not an easy thing to do. It'll take time and it'll take the right suppliers to have that commitment from their end to do this as well. So it might be that you might have to back out from suppliers if this is the way you want to go. But this is some examples that I'm just suggesting. Change effectiveness as well. Just a suggestion, when we have businesses that change software platforms from time to time. So when the change happens, there are a lot of issues that you identify because of change, a lot of permission issues and different kind of issues, data access issues. So rather than just having this full thing implemented and then checking at the end, what did we achieve? There should be effective planning done at the beginning itself, how we release and then verify the change has been implemented. So if it is done properly, if the planning and review is done properly with stakeholders assigned, with time period assigned, there is an automated process to review and ensure you look at the changes and you automatically make sure the change is effectively implemented. So this emphasis on reevaluating or planning the evaluation process at the end of a change is being suggested here. The last one is about infrastructure related to a hybrid work potential. This is a risk or a scenario that might be relevant to most of the people in this webinar. So if you have people working remote, and have you assessed all the risk associated with that? It might be a health and safety risk if they're working from home. Do they have a safe working environment at home without any psychological issues or bullying issues at the home, or which we don't consider sometimes as a business, but those things have to be taken into consideration as well. On the other side, in terms of data security, in terms of the data protection, have we put controls around that? How do we ensure when they are accessing the information with a private network, what kind of protection do they have at home? And when they're traveling and are they using a public network? So those kind of risk has to be incorporated. So these are some samples that you can think of as a risk that you need to consider. This might be things that you already consider, but it's now being specifically listed in the standard, and that's why it's important to understand, are we looking at this right now? If not, is this relevant to us? Sometimes it may not be. You don't have a remote work, so maybe that's not an issue for you. But it's to identify, I understand these are the risks, these are the changes, these are how it will affect me, and these are what I will be taking as an action associated with that. So how we can help you is that when you need to have an assessment or do the gap analysis to understand specifically how your business is having any gaps for those changes that we did mention, we can help you do the gap assessment to understand where all you currently have a gap, where all you already comply, and if you are already ready to be certified for the business, certified to the latest standard as well. So once it's released, so we can help you assess and make sure you're ready, or help you uplift your system to get it to a certifiable level at that point. And that's what we can do. We have a quick survey that just popped up. It's if any of the business that's just observing this webinar has any requirement at this point or at a later stage, feel free to put a response and we'll touch base to understand how we can support you, and we'll take it from there. So I'll just give a couple of minutes for that. Okay. So just a couple, yeah. So question and answers, I'll just go to the chat. Let me have a quick look what questions. Yeah, so a couple of questions. So climate change, it's not that it has become stricter. It has climate change consideration has been implemented in 2024. So the audit has been, I would say, as not as strict as it could be. It was just always a recommended question. Have you considered climate change? Yes or no? Okay, what have you done? Okay, I can see some references. Now that it's talking about those resilience and the disruptions, the word disruptions is coming across the standards. So I would say the the assessment will get a bit more stricter. The expectation is the same. It's just that the audit might get a bit more stricter now that they have given time for us to imbibe that change. And now that there is a enhanced requirement towards sustainability and that side of things across the world, and especially in Australia due to the ASRS mandatory reporting requirements, which I believe most businesses are aware at this point. So because of those kind of requirements, there are hidden requirements that business may not know as well. So it's really important to understand how you will be impacted by the climate change. Again, it's not primarily your impact on the climate. That is Environment Management System 14001. It's impact of climate change on your business. It's two different things, but there will be a crossover at some point if there is a customer asking, do you have a 14001? So then it becomes a stakeholder expectation in 4.2 that you have a 14001 as part of the 9001. Will there be any new mandatory documented information requirements? I would say it's not. It's evidence for all these requirements is being requested, like how we demonstrate culture and ethics being communicated by the leadership and things like that. So it's the evidence that's being requested more than a new document or a new procedure that's being created. The existing documentation or a change management procedure or the system would work. I don't see a need to create anything new per se. But you have to have systems to comply with that, which can be a modification of the existing documentation. Quality policy will be, like I said, it's just a slight change, but because it's the top of your management system pyramid, I would say definitely look at it, make sure the context is reviewed. It would be in most of the cases, but sometimes it could improve. The presentation made available to the customers. This video, I believe, will be published in the internet as well. I'll check, and I think there shouldn't be anything stopping us from sharing the presentation. So we'll have the presentation released as well. Just any other questions that we need to go through? Anything that you need to know, guys? I'll wait for. The draft is not public. It's available, but it still has to be purchased. So that's one of the key issues as well. When it's purchased, when you have a requirement to purchase, what you think is, I'll go into the net and just read what are the changes, which is there. While I was doing the research, I saw many information, but there are information and videos associated with the CD version, which was pre-August, which had much more details into certain requirements, specifically listing certain digital tools and some specific controls and different wordings altogether. So if you end up going into those kind of information online, there is a chance that you might get derailed and go into unnecessary complications. So it's really important you understand, if you find information online, make sure it's referring to the latest DIS version, or if it's after March, make sure you're looking at the FDIS version, which is a final draft international standard.